Welcome, and thank you for being here tonight. Wherever you are right now, let yourself settle a little more deeply into the warmth around you. Let your body grow heavy. Let your eyes close, softly, without effort, and just let your breathing begin to slow, on its own, naturally, the way it always does when the day finally lets you go. Tonight, as you drift, you will gently come to understand something about the quiet wisdom of Buddhist teachings, and you do not need to concentrate or remember anything at all. Simply let the words wash over you like warm water, and let the understanding arrive the way sleep arrives, softly, on its own, without you having to do a thing. So let your shoulders drop now, just a little. Let your jaw soften, and let yourself begin to sink. There is a very old idea, one that has been passed down through many quiet centuries, through temple gardens and candlelit rooms and the soft breathing of monks sitting in the half-dark before dawn. It is a simple idea, as most of the deepest things are. It is this, that suffering does not come from what happens to us. It comes from how tightly we hold on. And perhaps, right now, in the warmth and the quiet of this moment, you can feel what it would mean to let go of just a little of that holding. The hands can relax, the chest can soften. The thoughts that were moving quickly a little while ago can begin, slowly, to slow. Buddhist wisdom has a word for this kind of suffering, this suffering that comes from grasping. It is called dukkha. And while that sounds like a heavy word, the teaching around it is actually one of the most gentle things you will ever hear. Because the teaching does not ask you to fix anything, or to be different from what you are, or to try harder, or to push against the grain of your life. It simply says, look, softly, at what you are holding, and ask yourself whether you need to hold it quite so tightly tonight. You do not. You can put it down now, just for tonight, just for these quiet hours while the world rests around you. Whatever it was that you were carrying today, it will still be there in the morning if it needs to be. But right now, in this soft and darkened room, with the warmth of the bed rising slowly around you, you do not have to carry anything at all. The breath moves in and out, and the body grows a little heavier with each slow exhale. There was once a teacher who would begin every lesson by pouring tea. He would pour slowly, filling the cup of whoever sat across from him, and he would keep pouring even after the cup was full, even as the tea spilled softly over the rim and onto the table. And when his students looked at him with puzzlement, he would smile, very gently, and say, "You are like this cup. You are so full of what you already believe, of what you are already certain of, that there is no room left for anything new to enter. The only way to receive something is first to empty a little of what you are carrying." That story has been told many times in many ways, and the reason it has traveled so far through the centuries is not because it is surprising. It is because, when you hear it in a quiet moment like this one, in the dark, in the warmth, with your breathing slow, it resonates somewhere soft and deep inside you. You already know that this is true. You have always known. There is a part of you that has been waiting for permission to empty out a little, to release, to make room. And that is all that is being asked of you right now. Not to understand, not to achieve, not to arrive anywhere in particular, just to soften, just to let the cup tip gently on its side, and let a little of the day drain quietly away. Let a slow breath go now. Let the chest sink. Let the body settle just a little more deeply into the warmth beneath you. Another of the very old teachings, one that runs like a quiet river through the whole landscape of Buddhist thought, is the teaching of impermanence. Anicca, it is sometimes called. The recognition that nothing stays, that everything, every feeling, every moment, every worry and every joy is passing through. That the nature of all experience is to arise, to linger for just a little while, and then to pass on. And you might think that this would be a sad thing to understand. You might think that knowing nothing lasts would leave a person feeling hollow or unmoored. But the strange and tender truth, the thing that so many people have quietly discovered after sitting with this teaching for a while, is that it does not make life feel emptier. It makes it feel lighter. Because if nothing lasts, then the difficult thing you are carrying right now will not last either. The weight on the chest, the tightness in the shoulders, the loop of worry that was turning in the mind earlier tonight. None of these things are permanent. None of them are fixed. They are passing through you the way clouds pass through a wide autumn sky, and the sky itself remains open and clear and undamaged, no matter how dark the clouds grow for a while. You are the sky. That is the gentlest way to understand it. The thoughts are the weather, the feelings are the weather, and the weather always, always changes. It cannot do anything else. So you can watch it tonight from somewhere soft and still inside yourself. You do not have to argue with it, or chase it, or hold it, or fix it. You can simply rest, the way the sky rests, open and quiet and very, very large, and let the weather move through on its own. The body is growing heavier now. The breath is slower. The edges of things are softening the way they do at the beginning of sleep, when the sharp lines of the day begin to blur and dissolve into something warmer and less defined. There is a quality that Buddhist teachers often speak of, and it is called equanimity. It is not quite the same as happiness. It is something quieter than that. It is a kind of steadiness, a settled warmth at the center of things that does not rise and fall with the events of the day. It is the feeling of sitting very still in a boat on a calm lake, and knowing that even if the surface ripples a little, even if the wind moves across it and stirs the water into small waves, the depth beneath remains perfectly undisturbed, perfectly still, perfectly at rest. Equanimity does not mean that nothing touches you. It means that you have found, somewhere within yourself, a place where you can rest that is deeper than what touches you. Deeper than the noise, deeper than the worry, deeper than the plans and the memories and the unfinished things. A place as still as deep water, as quiet as the space between one breath and the next. You can rest there tonight. You are resting there now, a little perhaps, even as you listen. Even as the words move slowly past you like leaves on a stream, something in you is already settling toward that deep and quiet place. Something in you already knows where it is. Something in you has been there before, in the best moments of sleep, in the softest mornings, in those rare and lucky instants when the mind simply went quiet and the whole body exhaled. You are sinking toward that now, slowly, easily, without effort. The Buddhist tradition speaks often of the mind as something that can be trained, the way a garden can be tended. And just like a garden, the mind does not need to be forced into anything. It does not need to be dug up and replanted overnight. It simply needs, day after day, a little gentle attention, a little quiet, a little willingness to notice what is growing there, and to water the things that are soft and flowering, and to leave the weeds without much sunlight so they gradually lose their hold. This is what meditation is, in the most peaceful sense of the word. Not a performance, not an achievement, not a task to be completed correctly. Just a gentle sitting with oneself, a quiet watching, a willingness to be present with whatever is arising without needing to push it away or hold on to it or judge it. Just breathing, just noticing, just being here, softly, in the body, in the breath, in the moment. And you are doing something very like that right now. Right now, as you lie still in the dark and the warmth, as your breath moves slowly in and out, and the world grows quieter around you, you are practicing something the old teachers would recognize. You are practicing letting go. You are practicing being still. You are practicing presence, the simplest and the rarest thing, the thing that always costs nothing and gives everything. The body is very relaxed now. The breath is very slow. Let the weight of the legs go. Let them rest fully against the bed. Let every small tension in the thighs and the calves and the feet simply melt downward. Let the arms be heavy. Let the hands open softly. Let the space between the shoulder blades widen and soften. Let the shoulders themselves drop toward the warmth below. And the face. Let the face be still. Let the tiny muscles around the eyes soften and let go. Let the forehead smooth. Let the lips rest gently apart or together, whichever is easier, whichever feels like less holding. There is nothing to clench, nothing to brace for. Only this. Only the warmth and the quiet and the slow, slow breath. There is another teaching, one of the most beloved in the whole long tradition, and it has to do with a flower. With the lotus flower specifically, which grows in muddy water. The lotus pushes its roots down into the soft, dark mud at the bottom of a still pond, and from that murky, clouded depth it grows, slowly, upward through the water, through the dim and the cool, and it arrives at the surface, and it opens into something of astonishing softness and beauty, perfectly clean, perfectly unblemished by the mud it rose through. And the teaching is simply this: that the mud is not the enemy of the flower. The mud is what makes the flower possible. The difficult conditions, the murky water, the dark place from which everything grows, these are not obstacles to a good life. They are the ground of it. They are what the roots hold on to. They are where the nourishment comes from. So the hard days are not separate from the beauty. They are not evidence that something has gone wrong. They are the water the lotus grows through. They are the depth that allows the roots to go deep. And the person who has known difficulty, who has sat with uncertainty and grief and confusion and fatigue, that person has roots that go somewhere real, has a depth that a life of only easy surfaces cannot grow. This is not meant to make difficulty feel welcome. It is not a call to seek out suffering or to romanticize hardship. It is something gentler than that. It is a soft permission to stop arguing with what has been hard, to stop feeling that the hard things disqualify you from something beautiful, to let the mud and the flower simply coexist in the same still water, the way they always have. The breath is very slow now. Each exhale is a little longer than the last, drifting out like smoke from a candle in a still room. The teaching of the lotus has offered comfort to so many people across so many centuries, in so many different kinds of darkness. Not because it resolves the darkness or explains it away, but because it reframes it, so gently, with such warmth and such love for the complicated truth of what it means to be alive. It does not say the mud does not matter. It says the mud is part of the story, and that from the mud, something of real and quiet beauty can still rise. Perhaps tonight you can feel that for yourself, somewhere in the softness of your chest, somewhere beneath the breath, that even the difficult parts of your particular story have been growing something, that even the muddy patches of the water you have moved through have fed the roots of something that is, slowly and in its own time, rising. Let that thought rest softly in the mind. Do not chase it or examine it too closely. Just let it settle there, like a leaf coming to rest on the surface of still water, floating gently, barely moving, held by the water's quiet surface without sinking and without flying away. Still, quiet. Here, there is a quality in Buddhist thought that is sometimes translated as loving kindness. The word, in the old language of the tradition, is metta, and it is one of those words that does not translate perfectly, because it contains something slightly larger than any single English word can hold. It is not quite love as in romance, and it is not quite kindness as in politeness. It is something closer to a warm and steady goodwill, a genuine and tender wish for well-being that extends outward, without condition, the way warmth extends outward from a fire. The practice of metta begins very close in. It begins with the wish that you, yourself, might be well, that you might be at ease, that you might be free from suffering, that you might know a deep and steady happiness. And this is the part that can be surprisingly difficult, turning the warmth inward, wishing for your own ease and peace with the same genuine tenderness you might feel for someone you love very much. Most of us are quite good at being kind to others, at least in intention. We want the people we love to be well. We feel something warm move in us when we imagine their happiness. But we are often strangely harsh with ourselves. We are quicker to find fault with ourselves than with anyone else. We hold ourselves to standards we would never impose on someone we cared for. We find it hard to simply wish ourselves well, the way the lotus wishes nothing at all but simply grows toward the light. The metta practice asks, very gently, whether you might try. Whether, just for a moment, you might hold yourself in the same warm attention you would offer someone small and tired and in need of rest. A child, perhaps, sleeping, or someone you love at the end of a long and difficult day. Could you offer that to yourself tonight? Not a performance of it. Not a forced feeling, just a small, quiet intention. A whisper from somewhere deep inside that says, "May I be well. May I be at ease. May I rest." And then let it go. Let it drift outward. You do not have to hold on to it. The warmth of the bed is moving up around you. The body is growing very heavy now. The way it does just before sleep takes you completely. That pleasant, leaden heaviness in the limbs, that sense of sinking slowly, of the bed becoming more real and more welcoming with every breath. The mind is growing quieter. The thoughts are slowing, becoming less distinct, more like shapes than sentences, more like the soft movement of water than anything with edges or corners or urgency. The thoughts are slowing, becoming less distinct, more like shapes than sentences, more like the soft movement of water than anything with edges or corners or urgency. And somewhere in that softening, another teaching arrives, not loudly, not as a lesson, simply as a quality in the air, the way the scent of rain arrives before the rain itself does, carried gently on a change in the wind. It is the teaching of impermanence. In the old language of the tradition, the word is anicca, and like metta, it carries something slightly larger than any single translation can quite hold. It is the understanding, very simple, very quiet, that all things pass, that nothing remains exactly as it is from one moment to the next, that even this breath, the one moving through you now, is already releasing, already changing, already becoming the next breath, which will be different in its own small way. This might sound at first like a sad idea, and many people, when they first encounter it, do feel a small tug of grief around it. The things we love do not stay. The moments that are beautiful do pass. The warmth of a summer evening, the particular quality of light through a window in the late afternoon, the feeling of being held, the feeling of being known. These things arise and then, gently, they dissolve. But the Buddhist understanding of impermanence is not, in the end, a sad teaching. It is one of the most quietly liberating things a human mind can come to rest in. Because if the beautiful things pass, then so do the difficult ones. So does the grief. So does the worry. So does the heaviness that has sometimes settled in the chest without asking permission. So does the long and complicated knot of whatever has felt unresolved. All of it, moving. All of it, already in the process of becoming something else. Something softer, something further downstream. Let the jaw soften just a little. Let the breath slow. The image that comes most naturally is the river. Not a river with white water and rapids, not a river of urgency, but a wide, slow river, in the soft light of late afternoon, moving without hurry, through a landscape that is very old and very still. And everything in the river moves. Everything passes the point where you are standing. The leaves that come around the bend will, in a moment, have passed. The light on the surface shifts, moment by moment, so slowly you can barely track it, and yet it is never the same light twice. You are standing at the bank of that river, or perhaps you are already the river itself, and what seemed fixed, what seemed stuck, what seemed like it would always be exactly as it is already moving, has always been moving, has never, not for a single moment, been entirely still. There is a particular kind of relief that comes when this truly lands, not as a philosophical idea to examine, but as something felt in the body, in the breath, in the slow and heavy warmth behind the eyes. The relief of understanding that you do not have to hold everything in place, that it is not your job to keep things from moving, that the natural tendency of all things is to change, to soften, to evolve, to eventually release into something else, and that this is not a failure. It is the very nature of being alive in a world that is itself alive and endlessly turning. The body is very heavy now, the blanket is warm, the room is very quiet. Somewhere in Buddhist practice, this understanding of impermanence becomes a kind of companion to the present moment. Because if all things pass, then the present moment, this one, the one that is happening right now in the softness of this near sleep, this half-dreaming, this quiet drift toward something deeper, this moment, is also unrepeatable, is also its own complete thing, not a stepping stone to somewhere else, not a problem to be solved or a waiting room to be endured, but a moment of its own, entire and whole, already beautiful in its own quiet way. The tradition speaks of resting in the present moment, the way you might rest in a warm pool of water, not gripping, not swimming hard toward the other side, simply floating, held, the water doing the work, the body releasing into it, the breath softening, the sky above wide and without edges. This is what the drowsy mind already knows how to do, instinctively, without being taught. In the moments just before sleep, the mind releases its grip on the day. It loosens its hold on the to-do lists and the unfinished conversations and the things that felt important in the daylight. It lets them drift. It finds, quite naturally, a kind of present moment rest, a settling into just this, just here, just the warmth and the weight and the quiet. Buddhist practice simply asks whether that natural softening might also be available in waking life. Not perfectly, not always, but more often. in small, quiet moments throughout the day, a pause, a breath, a gentle return to the sensation of being here, just now, before the mind rushes off again into what is coming or what is past. The breath is moving very slowly now. Each inhale is soft. Each exhale is longer, trailing out into the stillness of the room. There is another quality in the Buddhist teachings that moves very naturally alongside impermanence, and it arrives so softly that you may not even notice it arriving. It is the quality sometimes called non-attachment, and it is perhaps the most misunderstood of all the gentle ideas the tradition carries. Non-attachment does not mean not caring. It does not mean holding people at a distance, or refusing to love, or moving through life behind glass where nothing can touch you. That is not what the teaching is pointing toward at all. What it is pointing toward is something much softer and much more human than that. It is the difference between loving something and clinging to it, between caring for something and demanding that it never change, between being present with someone and needing them to be a certain way in order to feel safe. A parent watching a child sleep does not love the child less because they know the child will grow. The love is complete in that moment, warm and full, without needing the child to remain small forever. The love itself is not attached to a particular form of the child. It simply loves what is here. The flowers in the old monastery gardens that the monks tended for centuries were loved without clinging. They were watered and given light, and cared for with real and quiet devotion. And when they faded, as all flowers do in their season, they were not mourned with the kind of grief that comes from wishing they had been something other than flowers, something permanent, something exempt from the natural turning of things. They were let go with the same gentle care with which they had been tended. Let the shoulders settle a little deeper into the surface beneath you. The body is very soft now, very willing to rest. This quality of loving without clinging, of caring without grasping, is one of the quietest forms of freedom the human heart can know. Because so much of suffering, so much of the low hum of anxiety that moves through a life, comes not from the things themselves, but from the resistance to their changing, from the holding on, from the white-knuckled insistence that this stay, that this remain, that this not move. And the practice, very gently, asks what it might feel like to open the hand. Not to throw away what is in it, but simply to stop gripping, to let the thing rest in the open palm, held without clutching, present without being imprisoned. The breath does this naturally. The breath is perhaps the simplest teacher of non-attachment there is. You cannot hold an inhale forever. At a certain point, quite automatically, the body releases it, and then the exhale comes, and you cannot hold that either. The breath knows how to let go, over and over, all through the night, all through the years, without being instructed, without effort. The breath simply gives and releases and gives again, endlessly, a quiet demonstration of what the heart might also learn, in its own slow time, in its own gentle way. The mind is growing very still now. The thoughts that remain are not demanding any attention. They are simply there, the way clouds are simply there, present without pressing, visible without requiring anything. In the tradition of Zen, which grew from these older roots and found its own particular quality, its own particular flavor of quiet, there is an image that returns again and again, the image of a mirror, a still mirror, undisturbed, reflecting whatever passes before it, without holding on to any of it. A tree passes, and the mirror holds the tree. The tree moves away, and the mirror holds nothing. It does not chase the tree. It does not grieve the absence of the tree. It simply remains, clear and still, ready to receive whatever comes next, with the same open and unclouded presence. The Zen teachers speak of the mind being like this, in its deepest nature. Not the busy surface of the mind, with its plans and worries and memories and anticipations, but the deeper ground of the mind, the quiet place beneath all of that, which is always already still, which has always been still, even on the busiest of days, even in the most complicated of seasons, the way the bottom of the ocean is always still, even when the surface is in motion. And in sleep, in the deep and gentle surrender of sleep, the surface calms, the mind returns, without effort, to something of that deeper stillness. The mirror clears. Whatever the day brought, it is already receding, already becoming a little less distinct, a little less loud, a little more like memory, like dream, like the soft impression left in water after a stone has passed through and the rings have slowly widened and faded and the surface has grown smooth again. You are drifting now toward that smoothness. The body is no longer asking for anything. The limbs are heavy and still. The breath is so slow and so quiet that it has become part of the room itself, part of the soft and undisturbed air of this dark and resting space. There is a teaching in the Zen tradition about what is sometimes called original nature. The idea, warm and ancient and endlessly patient, that beneath all the accumulated weight of experience, beneath all the stories and the self-judgments, and the years of trying and failing and trying again, there is something in you that has not been diminished, something that was never broken, something that does not need to be fixed or improved or earned back, because it was never lost. It was only, sometimes, very thoroughly covered over. The way snow covers a garden in winter, not killing it, only waiting over it, the deep roots still there, still warm in the soil beneath, still carrying everything they need for spring. The Zen teachers sometimes pointed to this with a question they did not expect to be answered in words. They were pointing past words, past thinking, into the quiet place the words are gesturing toward. And students would sit with those questions, sometimes for years, not solving them, but being softened by them, worn smooth like a stone in a river, until the question and the questioner became very quiet, and something underneath both of them became, for a moment, visible. You do not need to do anything with this tonight. You do not need to understand it or hold it or carry it anywhere. Let it simply rest near you, the way a candle rests on a table in a quiet room, giving its light without asking to be watched, warming the air without requiring acknowledgement. The room is very soft. The darkness is kind. There is nowhere to go and nothing to become, and no version of yourself that is required here, in this dark and resting place, except the one that is already here, already breathing, already slowly and completely letting go. The Zen tradition also carries, very lightly, an understanding of interconnection, the sense that nothing exists in isolation, that everything and every person arises in dependence on everything else, the way a wave arises from the ocean and cannot truly be separated from it, the way a tree arises from soil and rain and light, and the countless generations of fallen leaves that have composted slowly into the ground beneath it. In the old metaphor of the tradition, the universe is sometimes compared to a great net, stretching in all directions without end, and at every intersection of the net hangs a jewel, and each jewel reflects all the other jewels, so that in any one jewel you can see the reflection of all the others, and in any one reflection you can see another reflection, and so on without end, the whole thing shimmering with mutual light, each part both itself and, in some quiet sense, everything else. It is an image that is easier to feel than to explain, and in this soft and drowsy state, perhaps it is easier still, because the analytical mind has loosened its grip, and something more open has taken its place, something more willing to simply rest in the image without needing it to resolve into a conclusion. You are one of the jewels in the net, and the light that shines in you has come from everywhere, from the people who loved you before you could remember being loved, from the teachers who planted small seeds in you, some of whom never knew they had, from the difficulties that deepened you, from the easy days that rested you, from the long lineage of human beings who lived and struggled and found small moments of beauty and passed something of themselves forward into the world without knowing exactly where it would land or how it would grow. You are connected to all of that, invisibly, warmly, completely, and in this moment of near sleep, in this quiet and resting room, that connection asks nothing of you. It simply holds you, the way the earth holds everything that rests upon it, without effort, without condition, with a steadiness so complete it has become invisible, taken for granted, the way the most reliable things often are. The breath is very slow. The body is sinking. There is a quality of stillness now that is different from the stillness of a few moments ago. It is deeper. It is less like waiting and more like arriving, the kind of stillness that is not the absence of movement, but the presence of something complete and unhurried and entirely without urgency. In some of the old monastic traditions, the monks would begin each day in the dark, before dawn, in a room very much like the one you are resting in now, quiet, dark, The only light a candle or two, small flames moving very gently in the still air, and they would sit with the silence, not trying to fill it, not trying to accomplish anything within it, simply allowing themselves to be present in it the way a stone is present in a field, belonging to the place it rests, not going anywhere, not needing to. And in that early darkness, in that unhurried quiet before the world required anything of them, something in them settled, something that had been slightly tense, slightly on guard, slightly oriented toward effort and striving and becoming, that something softened and released and returned, very gently, to something prior to all of that. Something that knew, without needing to be told, that it was already enough, that the sitting was enough, that the breathing was enough, that being present, quietly, in a dark and still room, was in itself a kind of wholeness that required no addition and no improvement. That same quality is available to you now. You do not have to seek it or create it or be worthy of it. It is simply here, the way the darkness is here, the way the warmth is here, the way the quiet is here, surrounding you, receiving you, asking nothing at all except that you continue, very slowly, to let go. The thoughts are almost gone now. What remains is more like weather than language, a soft pressure, a gentle warmth, the slow and almost imperceptible movement of the breath, in and out, like a tide on a very calm shore, barely reaching the sand, and then retreating again without sound, without hurry, without anything that could be called urgency or intention. Only the soft arrival and the softer leaving. Only the breath and the dark and the warmth. Only this. And yet, within that only, there is something so complete it hardly needs a name. The breath continues on its own. The body continues its quiet work without being asked. The heart beats in its steady, unhurried way, as it has beaten through every night of your life, faithful and undemanding, keeping its slow rhythm in the dark, without ever needing your attention, or your approval, or your direction. There is something deeply restful in remembering that so much is simply happening, without your involvement, that the body knows things the mind has never had to learn, that beneath every thought you have ever had, beneath every plan and worry and hope and memory, the body has been quietly doing what it does, breathing, circulating, resting, repairing, returning always to its own deep and wordless knowing. The Buddhist teachings have a word for this quality of natural unfolding, not a word that translates easily, but it points towards something like effortless action, or doing, that arises without force, without grasping, without the sense of a self standing behind the doing and making it happen by will, the way a flower opens, not because it has decided to open or because it is trying very hard to open, but because opening is simply what flowers do when the conditions are right, the way water finds its way downhill without consulting anything, without effort, following the path that is already there, that gravity has always offered, that the shape of the land makes available without instruction. You have always known this quality, even if you have rarely paused to notice it. It is present in the moments just before sleep, when the thoughts grow thin and the body grows heavy, and something lets go that you were not even aware you were holding. It is present in the slow hours of a Sunday afternoon when nothing is required. It is present in the exhale, especially the exhale, the part of the breath that releases without trying to release, that simply allows the air to leave, the way a hand allows something it has been carrying to be set down, gently, onto a soft surface. Let that be happening now, the exhale, slow and complete, the body settling a little more with each one, the heaviness in the limbs a kind of richness, a kind of fullness, as if the body is becoming more itself, more completely at rest, more entirely here in this warm and quiet place. There is a story, told very gently in some corners of the tradition, of a student who could not sleep. Night after night, the mind would not quiet, the thoughts would circle and return, and the student would lie in the dark, feeling both exhausted and unable to rest. And so the student went to a teacher and described what was happening, and the teacher listened with the particular quality of attention that good teachers have, which is not the attention of someone solving a problem, but the attention of someone simply being present with another person, fully, without judgment, without hurry. And when the student had finished speaking, the teacher was quiet for a long moment. Then the teacher said, very softly, that the difficulty was not with the sleeping. The difficulty was that the student was trying to sleep, was working at it, was bringing to the night the same quality of effortful striving that filled the day, so that even the darkness became a kind of task, and rest became a kind of goal, and the mind could not let go because it had been set to the work of letting go, which is, of course, not really letting go at all. The teacher said that sleep is not something you do. Sleep is something that happens when you stop doing. When the doing grows so thin and so transparent that it simply dissolves on its own, the way a mist dissolves in the warmth of a morning, not because the morning is trying to dissolve it, but because warmth and mist cannot occupy the same space, and warmth simply is, and in its being, the mist finds nowhere left to hold. The student went away with that, and that night, instead of trying to sleep, the student simply lay in the dark and allowed things to be as they were. The thoughts that came, they came. The sounds from outside, they arrived and passed. The body in its heaviness, in its warmth, in its slow and faithful breathing, it was allowed to simply be a body, resting in a dark room, doing what bodies do when the night comes and the world goes quiet. And somewhere in that allowing, sleep arrived. Not as an achievement, not as the successful conclusion of an effort, but as a guest who had always been about to arrive, who had only been waiting, with infinite patience, for the door to be left open. That door is open now. The thoughts that pass through are growing lighter, less defined, less attached to anything that needs to be followed or resolved. They arrive the way sounds from a great distance arrive, soft enough that you cannot quite make out what they are saying, only that something is there, faintly, and then it fades, and the quiet fills back in, the way water fills a space left by a stone, smoothly, without seam, as if the space had never been otherwise. The Buddhist teachings speak often of the nature of mind, and they do so in ways that are not frightening or demanding, but rather quietly reassuring, because what they point to is not something foreign or difficult, but something already familiar, something you have touched every night of your life, in the moments between waking and sleep, when the boundaries of the self grow soft, and the sense of being a separate and defined person becomes, for a little while, less insistent. They speak of mind as something more like a vast and open sky than like a small and contained room. The thoughts and feelings and sensations that move through it are like clouds, arising from conditions, changing their shape slowly, drifting, dissolving, arising again in a different form. The sky itself is not disturbed by the clouds. It does not try to push them away or hold them in place. It simply remains, open and spacious and untroubled, the same whether the clouds are present or absent, whether they are heavy and dark, or thin and luminous, or entirely gone. In the tradition, this sky-like quality of mind is not something you have to achieve. It is not a reward for years of practice, though practice may help you notice it more clearly. It is simply what mind is, already, underneath the ordinary busyness of the thinking, the planning, the worrying, the remembering. It is the background, always present, never damaged, never diminished. The way the sky is never damaged by the weather that moves through it. The way the ocean is never damaged by the waves that rise and fall upon its surface. Right now, in this restful dark, in this state between waking and sleeping, you are very close to that openness. Closer than you usually come during the daylight hours, when the thinking is so loud and so continuous that the background becomes invisible beneath it. But now the thinking has grown soft. The clouds are few and very slow, and the sky behind them, that open and unreachable and utterly undisturbed expanse, is easier to sense, easier to rest in, even if only for a breath or two at a time. There is nothing you need to do with this. The knowing of it is enough. Or even less than knowing, even something softer than knowing, a kind of half-remembering, a sense of recognition without effort, the way you recognize the warmth of a familiar room without having to think about what you are recognizing. Let the breath come and go. Let the body be heavy and warm. The old teachers also spoke of something they called original nature, a phrase that points toward what you are, before the world has finished explaining to you what you are, before the ideas about yourself have settled and hardened, before the comparisons and the judgments and the long accumulated sense of your own edges and limitations. What you are in the moment before any of that in the moment before the first thought of self arises. They did not mean something mystical by this, or rather, they meant something that is mystical only because it is so ordinary, so close, so entirely present that it escapes the usual ways of looking. The way you cannot see your own eyes directly, not because they are hidden, but because they are what is doing the seeing. Your original nature is something like that, so close it seems absent, so thoroughly here that there is nowhere to stand apart from it and observe it. And in sleep, in the soft dissolution of the self that sleep brings each night, you return to something of that closeness without knowing it, without being aware of the return, without anything to report afterward, except a kind of wordless refreshment, a sense of having rested somewhere very deep and very simple, somewhere that the thinking mind cannot quite reach, but that the body seems to know, the way roots know the dark and nourishing ground, without ever having seen it. You are moving toward that now. The body is entirely still, or if it moves at all, it moves only with the breath, a slow and gentle rise, a slow and gentle falling, and then a brief and complete quiet before the next breath arrives, soft and unhurried, and entirely sufficient. The warmth of the blanket, the weight of the body against the bed, the darkness behind the closed eyes, which is not an empty darkness but a full one, a darkness like the darkness of deep, slow water, which is not the absence of things, but the presence of a different kind of stillness, a depth that holds without asking to be understood. In the old forests of Japan, in the places where the Zen monasteries have stood for many hundreds of years, there is a quality of light in the late afternoon that painters have tried for centuries to capture and have never quite managed. The light comes through the cedar trees at a low angle, very golden and very soft, and it touches the moss on the stones and the roof of the meditation hall, and the surface of the small pond near the gate, and everything it touches seems to become slightly more itself, as if the light were not adding something from outside, but revealing something that was always there, waiting to be seen in exactly that quality of illumination. And the sound in those places at that hour is almost nothing, which is not quite nothing, the sound of water somewhere, very far away or very near, it is difficult to say which. The sound of wind in the upper branches of the trees, a sound like breathing, like the slow breathing of something much larger and older than any individual thing, a breathing that has been going on long before any of the stones or the trees or the moss or the small and faithful pond, and will continue long after. There is a quality of peace in imagining such a place, a peace that does not require you to be anywhere other than where you are, in this dark and quiet and warm room, the body settled, the breath slow, the mind growing very soft at its edges, the thoughts no longer sharp enough to cut or to compel. Only the drift. Only the slow and wordless movement toward rest. The tradition speaks, sometimes, of a quality called great ease, not the ease of having solved every problem or arranged every circumstance to your liking, but the ease that is available within any circumstance, even difficult ones, because it does not depend on circumstances at all. It depends only on the willingness to release, very gently, the grip of needing things to be different from what they are, to be, for a moment, just here, just this warmth, just this breath, just this quiet room, and this resting body, and this darkening, softening, slowly dissolving sense of being a self in a particular place at a particular moment. The particular is becoming less particular now. The edges are less clear. The room and the body and the breath are blending into one another, the way colors blend at the horizon at dusk, so that there is no single moment when the blue of the sky becomes the gold of the last light, and then the deep and soft dark blue of the coming night. It is all one gradual and beautiful and entirely unhurried becoming. And you are part of that becoming. You always have been. Every night, this same slow dissolving. Every night, this same gentle return to something prior and simple. Every night, the thinking mind growing quiet and the deeper rest arriving, faithful as the dark, as warm as the blanket, as close as the breath. The cedar forest is very still. The small pond holds the last of the light. A leaf comes loose from somewhere high above and descends, not falling exactly, more like drifting, following the air's slow invitation downward, turning once, very slowly, without urgency, without destination, moving through the quiet in the way that only very light and very unhurried things can move, as if the air itself were a kind of resting place, and the descent were simply the longest, softest exhale. It touches the surface of the water so gently that there is barely a ripple, only the smallest circle, spreading outward from the point of arrival, growing wider and lighter and slower as it reaches toward the edges of the pond, and then quieter, and then gone, the surface smooth again, the reflection of the darkening sky returned, the water holding the image of the first stars with a perfect and completely effortless stillness. You are somewhere in that stillness now. The thoughts have grown so soft, they are more like shapes than words, more like the memory of something than the thing itself. Drifting. The breath is very slow and very complete. Each one a small arrival, and then a small releasing, and then the quiet that comes after the releasing, which seems to grow a little longer each time, a little more spacious, a little more like the place where sleep lives, just at the edge of the breath, just at the softest and most open point of the exhale, where the body is so still and the mind so light that the boundary between resting and sleeping is no longer something that could be pointed to or named. It is only the warmth, only the dark, only the slow and faithful rhythm of the breath, steady and unhurried, arriving and departing like the tide, arriving and departing from a shore that does not mind, that has never minded, that simply receives and receives again without effort, without preference, without even the smallest wish for things to be otherwise. There is a teaching, held very lightly in these soft traditions, about the nature of refuge. The idea that there are places, or qualities, or understandings, in which the mind can truly rest. Not places that protect you from the world by building walls, but places that receive you so completely that the need for protection simply grows quiet, the way a wind grows quiet at evening, not because anything has stopped it, but because the day itself has softened, and the urgency that drove the wind is no longer there to drive it. The refuge is not a shelter from the world. It is something more like a homecoming, a returning to a ground that was always beneath you, beneath everything, a ground so familiar and so close that it was easy to overlook, easy to walk past without noticing, the way you sometimes do not notice the warmth of a room until you have stood quietly in it long enough for it to find you. Let the warmth of this room find you now. It has been here all along, patient and unhurried, surrounding the body, moving gently through the soft and settling dark. The tradition speaks of this ground in many ways, with many names, because no single name quite holds it. Some call it the nature of mind, which sounds like a grand and difficult thing, but is perhaps the simplest possible thing, simpler than any thought about it, simpler than any name given to it. Something that is already present before any thought arises, something that remains after every thought subsides, the way a lake remains after the wind has finished moving across its surface and the ripples have smoothed themselves back into stillness. The wind passes, the ripples soften, the lake is there as it always was, as it always is, unchanged by what moved through it, unchanged by what it reflected, unchanged even by the dark that has settled over it now, gently, like a blanket, like the dark that is settling very gently over your own mind as the thoughts grow slower and farther apart, and the spaces between them grow wider and softer and more restful. The spaces between thoughts. There is something tender to notice there, or not quite to notice, more to allow, more to simply not disturb, the way you would not disturb a sleeping animal by reaching toward it, the way you would simply observe it breathing from a little distance, the way its breath rises and falls and rises again, so easy, so entirely free of effort, so entirely content to simply continue. The spaces between your thoughts are very wide now, wide and warm and very quiet. The cedar forest beyond the low stone wall is deep in the kind of dark that has no beginning and no end to it, the kind of dark that does not feel like an absence of light, so much as a presence of its own, a soft and encompassing presence. The way sleep is a presence, the way warmth is a presence, the way the quiet breathing of the body in repose is a presence, steady and selfless, and entirely without demand. Somewhere in the tradition, there is an image of the moon and the water. The moon, full and very still above the mountain, reflected in the surface of a lake below. And the question, held very softly, without urgency, more like a wondering than a question, whether the moon in the water is the same moon as the moon above, or a different moon, or neither, or whether the distinction between the two is itself the thing that softens when the mind grows quiet enough to simply look, without needing to decide. The two moons, the one above and the one below, both equally still, both equally luminous, both equally indifferent to whether they are thought of as real or reflection, both simply present in the long and quiet night. And you are looking at them now, from somewhere at the edge of the lake, in the dark, in the cool and gentle air, the body very still, the way a body grows still, when it has arrived at a place where it has no need to go anywhere, where it is simply present in the quiet, and the dark, and the soft and total absence of any reason to move, or to speak, or to think any particular thought. The moon in the water barely moves. A small breath of wind, so soft it is more felt than heard, passes across the surface, and the reflection shimmers once, the way a thought shimmers through a mind growing still, and then it settles, and the moon is there again, just as it was, just as whole, just as quietly itself. The water does not hold the moon by trying to hold it. It simply is what it is, still and clear and open, and the moon is simply what it is, present and luminous and unhurried, and the reflection arises between them the way all gentle things arise, without effort, without intention, simply because the conditions are soft enough. Your conditions are soft enough now. Your mind is very still. The thoughts that remain are not sharp thoughts. They are more like the last slow shapes of clouds, drifting at the edge of the visible, drifting without direction, dissolving without arrival. More texture than content, more warmth than meaning. The way a voice heard through a wall in another room is more presence than language, more comfort than information. There is something in the tradition about kindness, about the quality of warmth that does not require a reason. The warmth that is simply extended, the way warmth is extended from a fire, not because the fire has decided to warm anything, not because the fire has chosen a recipient or calculated a purpose, but because warmth is the nature of fire, and nature does not withhold itself. The kindness the tradition points toward is something like that, not a decision made in a particular moment toward a particular person. Something more like a quality of the open heart that, when the heart is open and the mind is quiet and the body is at rest, simply radiates, the way the warmth of the blanket radiates, the way the soft dark of the room radiates a kind of safety, the way the slow and faithful breath radiates the simple continuity of being alive, here, now, in this moment, and no other. This moment and no other, which is always true, and is the gentlest possible truth, and requires nothing of you except to be in it, the way the lake is in the night, the way the moss is in the slow and golden light of late afternoon, the way the cedar trees are in the wind that moves through their upper branches like breathing, like the breathing of something very old and very large and entirely at ease with its own existence. You have been breathing like that for a very long time tonight, slower and slower, each breath a little more complete than the one before, a little more willing to release at the end of the exhale, to rest in that small and open quiet before the next breath arrives on its own, without being summoned, without effort, the body knowing what to do, the body having always known, the body carrying within it a wisdom so deep and so habitual that the thinking mind was never needed for any of it. Let the thinking mind rest now. It has done enough. For today, for this evening, for this long and quiet passage towards sleep. It has turned over its questions and arranged its memories and rehearsed its plans and imagined its futures, and all of that was its own kind of faithfulness, its own way of caring, and now it can be thanked and softly released, the way you might release a small bird from your cupped hands, opening the hands very gently, and watching the bird sit there for a moment, still, on the open palm, and then simply lift, without drama, without farewell, without any sound at all, into the soft and open air. The air is open. The hands are open. The mind is open, in the way that sleep opens it, in the way that this particular dark and this particular warmth and this particular slow and lengthening breath open it, wider than thinking, wider than any idea about itself, wide and soft and quietly luminous, the way the night sky is quietly luminous, even when there are clouds, even when the moon and the stars are somewhere behind the grey and gentle ceiling of cloud, still present, still radiating their slow and unhurried light downward, through all that softness, finding its way through. The light finds its way through. Always, it finds its way through. There is something the tradition calls beginningless time, a way of understanding that the present moment is not only this moment, isolated and newly arrived, but is in some quiet and ungraspable way the continuation of a flow that has no first moment anyone could point to, no origin that could be named or found, a flow like a great and slow river that has been moving so long that the idea of its source has dissolved into the simple fact of its moving, its constant and unhurried moving, carrying everything that floats upon it with the same effortless and total impartiality, the leaf and the stone and the fallen blossom and the reflection of the clouds and the last light of the evening and the first dark of the night, all carried, all held, all borne along by something that does not tire and does not choose and does not arrive anywhere, because it has never departed from anywhere, because it is the arriving and the departing and everything in between, which is everything, which is this, which is the breath and the warmth and the dark and the slow and settling weight of the body in the bed, sinking a little deeper, settling a little further into that soft ground that receives without asking and holds without grasping and releases without grief. You are being held like that now. The ground beneath the bed, beneath the room, beneath all of it, receiving the weight of everything, quietly, without acknowledgement, without needing acknowledgement, simply there, simply present, the most faithful of all presences, the one that is never elsewhere. The small pond at the edge of the meditation garden holds the stars now, the whole ceiling of the night, very slow and very far, all of it held in that quiet and yielding surface, held so lightly that you could not say the pond is holding anything, only that the pond is open, and the sky is present, and between openness and presence, something arises that is neither one nor the other, but partakes of both. And it is very beautiful, and it requires no effort, and it will not ask you to understand it, only to be somewhere near it, in the dark, in the quiet, in the cool and cedar-scented air, the breath slow, the eyes closed, the world growing softer at every edge, the world growing softer, the edges dissolving, not disappearing, not being lost, only softening, the way wax softens near warmth, the way sound softens as its source grows distant, the way the remembered shape of a concern softens after enough hours of quiet, until it is no longer angular but rounded, no longer sharp but worn smooth, the way stones in a river are worn smooth, gradually, over such a long and patient time that the smoothing itself is never witnessed, only the result, and the result is something you can hold in your palm, something with no rough place left on it anywhere, something that has given up nothing of itself in becoming smooth except the roughness, and the roughness was never truly itself, only the temporary condition of something on its way to becoming what it more deeply was. What you most deeply are has no rough places. What you most deeply are has been here longer than the thoughts about it, longer than any of the names or the questions or the searching, simply here, the way the ground is here, the way the dark is here, the way the breath continues, the way the warmth of the blanket continues, to be exactly what it is, warm and close and entirely on your side, entirely devoted to this one simple thing, to being the warmth that holds you while the rest of it grows quiet, while the thinking grows quiet, while the world grows quiet, while everything grows very slow and very soft and very nearly still, very nearly still. The way a candle flame grows still in a room where all the windows have been gently closed, and all the doors have been gently closed, and the air has settled into itself, and the flame stands upright and barely moves, barely flickers, just breathes, just exists in its own small and luminous standing, neither reaching nor retreating, only present in that warm and wavering and entirely unhurried way that is the nature of flame when the world around it has grown peaceful enough to let it simply be. You are something like that flame now, warm in the dark, still in the settled air, not reaching, not retreating. Only here, in this particular quiet, in this particular warmth, in the slow and rhythmic conversation between the breath that comes and the breath that goes, and the slight pause between them that belongs to neither the coming nor the going, but is its own small country, its own place of rest, that country between the breaths where nothing is needed, where everything is already complete, where the body has already done what it came here to do, and is simply resting in the having done it, in the soft afterglow of the effort, the way the earth rests after rain, quietly receiving what has fallen, quietly letting it sink in. There is a teaching about the nature of rest that the tradition offers very gently, without urgency, without any sense that you must take hold of it or carry it anywhere. It says, in its own slow and unhurried way, that rest is not the absence of activity, that rest is not something you arrive at after the activity has stopped, as though it were a destination you reach by leaving somewhere else behind. It says that rest is something more fundamental than that, something underneath the activity and underneath the stillness alike, something that was present all along, even during the busy hours, even during the hours of effort and noise and movement, present the way the depth of the ocean is present even when the surface is moving, even when there are waves, even when the light is breaking on the water in 100 scattered directions at once. The depth is simply there, undisturbed, uninterested in the disturbance above it, quietly itself. That depth is quietly itself, and it is yours. It has always been yours, though the thinking mind, with its habit of movement and its taste for solving things, has sometimes passed over it, the way a boat passes over the water, without knowing what is underneath, without needing to know, intent on its own direction. But the depth does not need to be known to be present. It is present regardless, patient and enormous and very, very still, the way only very old things are still, the way mountains are still, not because nothing is happening, but because whatever is happening has so much room around it that it cannot make the mountain restless, cannot make it lean or shift or hurry. Let the breath be the mountain now. Let the body be the mountain, heavy and wide and receiving the dark the way a mountain receives the night, without ceremony, without resistance, simply allowing the dark to settle over it, the way snow settles, the way mist settles, the way silence settles into all the small places of the stone, into all the crevices and the hollows and the long sloped faces of the rock. Silence finding its way into everything, the way it always does, the way it is doing now, into the small spaces between the thoughts, into the brief countries between the breaths, into the soft places where the jaw has loosened and the shoulders have let their held weight go and the hands lie open and uncurled, and quietly receiving nothing, needing to receive nothing, already full in the way that emptiness is full, in the way that a clear and open sky is full of the same quality that makes it seem empty, which is spaciousness, which is the room for everything, which is the quality the tradition has always pointed toward, without being able to say its name exactly, because it is the kind of thing that dissolves a little when you look at it directly, and opens again when you simply rest in it, when you stop the looking and allow the being.